May the 20th, 2024. This was the Overshoot Day. It's the day when we as humanity has exhausted the natural resources that the planet can regenerate in a natural way. So the problem behind this is that we as humanity are consuming much more natural resources that the planet can regenerate. And this is because we are consuming a lot. Every small decision that we take has an impact, and this impact can be negative or positive. And most of the time, all the consumption has a negative environmental and sometimes also social impact. So today we are going to explore how a t-shirt is made and to understand its environmental and social impact. First of all, we need to know fashion is the second most polluting industry on the planet. It's responsible for 10% of the planet's total emissions. This is because the supply chain of a garment is very long and it takes many resources. Natural raw materials coming from soil or synthetic materials coming from soil source consuming energy and water. To make a t-shirt, we need to transform that raw material into a garment, a cotton flower into a t-shirt, or a fossil oil into a polyester backpack. To better understand the impacts, let's look at the process of creating a simple cotton t-shirt, one of those t-shirts that we all have. We start with the cotton crop, and most of the t-shirts that we can find on the market come from conventional cotton, which means that those crops are using MGO seeds, also monocrops, and they are using chemical fertilizer and large amount of waters. The consequences of this type of cultivation or crops are intensive land use with depletion of soil health, loss of soil biodiversity, and intense use of water. This is especially important because in many cases it's drinking water that is being used to irrigate the fields and has a negative impact because in many cases it reduces access to drinking water in the communities near where cotton is produced. Producing a single t-shirt requires up to 2,700 liters of water from the cotton crop until it reaches the consumer, the water equivalent to what a European person consumes in 2.5 years. It's true that cotton, being a sustainable fiber, is assumed to be better, more sustainable than a synthetic one. But we need to understand the negative impact a conventional cotton produces on the soil, biodiversity, and water. And of course, in all people, farmers and the communities. Have you ever wondered what the life of this farmer is like? Well, the reality is that the answer to that question will not be liked by anyone. But it's the reality. In a conventional cotton crop, we are using MGO seeds. The soil is treated with fertilizer that are depleting the health of the soil, the biodiversity, and the result year after year is that soil is becoming a non-fertile soil. Soil quality keeps going worse. Harvests are getting smaller, and at the same time, costs keeping rising. Extreme conditions for farmers and very low incomes for worsening cotton quality. There are some areas in which crop scandals have been uncovered where the workers were slaves. From there are still many processes. The process of cleaning the fiber, bleaching the cotton, and the process of dyeing and finishing the t-shirt. All this is what we call the wet processes. processes in which a large amount of water and chemicals are consumed. Chemicals that not always comply with international legislation or the proper environmental management. Chemicals that not only sometimes end up in those rivers from that water that belongs to those communities that live in the surrounding where the factories are located and that makes them no longer drinkable. But chemicals that can also get on your skin when you wear the t-shirt. Of course, we cannot forget all the people involved in the process of cutting and making the t-shirt. Millions of people in developing countries who sometimes work in conditions that don't comply with human rights or the International Labour Organization. Sometimes even putting their life at risk, as we saw in Rana Place in 2013, where 1,100 people died due to the poor condition of the factory in which they work. The result of all this is that at the end we find t-shirts on the market at 2, 3, 4 or 5 euros. Buying so cheaply unconsciously generates in us a feeling of using and throwing again, in which we don't value everything it has cost, the value of each of the processes, resources and people behind it. In the last 20 years, we consume approximately twice as much, but each garment is used half as often. It's estimated that each garment that we buy is used on average between 5 and 7 times. A fast fashion industry that pushes us to consume more and more with lower and lower prices. A price that doesn't cover everything we call externalities, both social and environmental. And if no one is paying for them, the one who pays it, in the end, is the planet. And in the medium term, it will be you and your children who will suffer the consequences of those indirect impacts for which brands that are not taking responsibility. That we, as consumers, can decide what we dress, the clothes that we buy, because the decision we make in our day-to-day life has a great impact on the future. Every product is an investment. We can be protecting natural resources so that tomorrow future generations will have a planet where they can breathe clean air, drink drinking water, and have a healthy life. Or we can continue to buy clothes at 5 euros and destroy the planet. So which t-shirt are you going to buy from now on?